Welcome everyone to the 2015 AAA Texas 500 at Texas Motor Speedway race review, where I recap what went on before the race, during the race, and after the race. So, where should I begin? My thoughts on the race. I could really go multiple different ways. And basically, I'll put it like this: before the last caution, before the last restart, and the last restart came with about 17 laps to go. I was had those two things not had happened, I would have been coming here telling you that this race was an absolute bore, in my opinion. There just wasn't a whole lot to talk about. I mean, the thing is, Keselowski led 312 laps. The thing is, Keselowski clearly had, in my opinion, the best car throughout the whole entire race up until that final restart. Because the thing is that his car would start going away, I guess. And the eventual winner eventually made gains and eventually won the race. I'll get into who won that race later on in this race review. But the thing is, only 15 lead changes. But the thing is, if you take away, if you take away the drivers staying out under caution just to lead one lap, or if you take away green flag pit stops, this race probably only had like 10 lead changes, and maybe even less. Actually, yes, it would have been less than 10. It actually would have been less than 10 lead changes. But thankfully, the last green flag run saved us from. It definitely saved a lot of us, and definitely I think the fans who showed up for this race, I think definitely got their minds with those last 17 laps, because the thing is, those last 17 laps, it was possibly the best racing we've had so far all too long. My opinion. And the thing is, actually, in the middle of the race, I actually remembered that this year, or actually this race, actually now marks 10 years that Texas Motor Speedway has hosted 2 Sprint Cup events. And the thing is, really thinking about it now, 10 years later, even though I became a NASCAR fan in the fall of 2007, I actually don't really know if having 2 Texas races has been widely successful. Because the thing is, if you're looking at the crowd, well, chances are about 80K or 70K, which can also be said as 80,000 or 70,000 people have probably been showing up for the last few fall races. Part of me feels like that, it's just sort of like it feels a little bit like a far cry from what it used to be, in my opinion. Because the thing is really before Texas got 2 dates, like crowds, like while the racing maybe was not drastically different and a lot better back then. The crowds, it was sort of like Indianapolis Motor Speedway level. Over 200,000 people showed up for these races. It's because it's just a fraction. I think maybe Texas Motor Speedway could go back to selling out and getting close to that number if we just had one day. But obviously that's not going to happen anytime soon. If you remember or I've heard about the 2016 schedule and the 5-year sanctioning agreements. No new tracks until 2021. And I think as Texas Motor Speedway itself, I think Texas Motor Speedway is possibly in my bottom 5 racetracks when it comes to favorites to least favorites. So in other words, that can be said as top 5 least favorite racetracks, because the thing is, even though the surface is worn out, it's just simply another cookie cutter racetrack, a lot like Charlotte, a lot like Atlanta. And speaking of Atlanta, actually there was actually one point in the middle of the race where actually it was the segment called Through the Field. Kyle Busch actually said something like, "This track is a lot like Atlanta." And the thing is, actually, who knows? Texas Motor Speedway, both races next year could actually be great. With the low downwards package. And actually, the time for this race, it was about an hour, maybe even 2 hours earlier than what the races had been usually starting on all the years before the fall race. I actually think having this race be an all-day race, I think it actually did make the racing better, because the thing is, day races the quality of racing is usually a little better than day than night, because the thing is like the groove widens a lot better, and the thing is you can go high, you can go low. There's also less grip in day races than night races. And the thing is, I'm going to go back to what happened before the final caution and the final restart. Really, before that, like the drama that we got, it came in the form of tire failures. And the thing is, this race definitely had the most amount of tire failures I can recall in recent memories. I think the last time we had this many tire failures was the 2014 Auto Club 400. And in fact, some people were actually they were referencing the 2008 Breaker 400, and I guess many people were referencing that race. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go look up the race yourself. You'll understand why. That definitely shows how many tire failures there were. I think there were probably around 10 tire failures. I think Texas Motor Speedway is not actually really known for having a lot of tire failures, as far as my memory serves. And the thing is, most of the drivers that I did have tire problems were actually towards the front of the field. Kevin Harvick, Kyle Larson, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Those are three no drivers, and actually two of those actually recovered and got top 10 finishes. Harvick finished third, Dale Earnhardt Jr. finished sixth. So it's definitely I think that actually made this race a little bit unusual. So I guess one word to describe this race is that it was just the unusual Texas race. I'll put it like that. The thing is, still, it was not the best race in the world, even with the final. Even with the final group I've run. The thing is, one thing I am definitely glad about, and this will be my final note before I move on to previous notes, I'm glad that we had a normal weekend, with little or no controversy whatsoever after the last 2 weeks. It was nice to see that, and it was nice to see us game. It was nice to see us get back to what NASCAR should be about. Good racing. So that's pretty much everything I have to say. And now let's move on to the previous notes. So the thing is, Matt Kenseth's penalty was upheld. The thing is, they appealed twice. And both times they failed, which this did not surprise me at all. And the thing is, Eric Jones filled in for not only Texas, but the thing is, he will also be in the car for Phoenix next week. And in case you're curious, I did make a video on my reaction to this, and so watch the video if you want to. And the thing is, when it comes to Eric Jones, this is actually pretty interesting. So Eric Jones, the thing is, Eric Jones did not start the Bristol race. The thing is, he did fill in for Denny Hamlin. I guess you could say midway through the race. The thing is, he's been in Denny Hamlin's car. Then Eric Jones got behind the wheel at Kansas for Kyle Busch. And now Eric Jones is going to be in the 20. He was in the 20 this week, and he'll be in the 20 next week. So the thing is, so far his 3 starts have actually been because he's filling in. And the thing is, Eric Jones, he was just simply the best and probably the only option, to be honest. And the thing is, Eric Jones, he also became the youngest driver to ever do the triple. And the thing is, he won the truck race, got top 5 in the Xfinity race, and the thing is, it was actually running into the top 10 throughout maybe possibly most of the day. So the thing is, Eric Jones, he's definitely he's considered to be one of the drivers, one of the rising talent in NASCAR. And to me, I think this race shows why. If you can hop in the car for your third time, especially because you were filling in and have the performance like you did, you definitely have a lot of talent. And I think Eric Jones will definitely be a star at some point in the future. It's at this point it's hard to see him not be a star or not be successful in the Cup Series, in my opinion. And speaking of rising stars, I have another one. This isn't really exactly Cup Series news. The thing is, I think is worth mentioning. Xfinity Series points to Chris Buescher. We don't know his Cup future yet. The thing is, we do know he is going to run at least one more year in the Xfinity Series next season. And I think that this is a good move. And the thing is, he actually said in an interview that he thinks too many drivers have been rushed in the past. And I think that is true. There are at least a couple drivers that I think were robbed too soon, and it was either a long time until they had success, or they never ever did it, or they never ever had success. But the thing is, I think simply in my opinion, I think Chris Buescher is going to be this year's Xfinity Series championship, and it would not surprise me if he can have a championship performance next season. The thing is, can Chris Buescher really save Roush? I doubt it personally, because the thing is Roush family. I think it's definitely driver talent, but also just poor Cup Series equipment. They have a good Xfinity program, obviously. Chris Buescher drives for Roush Family Racing in the Xfinity Series, and the thing is, he's leading the points and has won twice. So the thing is, Roush Family Racing really has a good Xfinity. Does have a good Xfinity Series program. The thing is, they have not had a good Cup program in the last few years. And the thing is, they've also lost the talented drivers like Matt Kenseth and Carl Edwards. So the thing is, it'll be interesting to see what happens when Chris Buescher most likely does move up to the Cup Series and probably gets a ride with Roush. It'll be interesting, to say the least. Anyway, now on to the weekend. Keselowski tops the first practice, followed by Harvick, Edwards, Larson, Logano, McMurray, Ryan Blaney, Eric Jones, Greg Biffle, and Kurt Busch. Then Keselowski got the pole, followed by Harvick, Kyle Busch, Logano, Larson, Eric Jones, Kurt Busch, Jimmie Johnson, Denny Hamlin, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Danica Patrick, and Greg Biffle. And I think is due to rain either Friday night or Saturday morning, or could be Friday night and Saturday morning. But both practices were canceled. Why was that? Well, the thing is because of weepers. And the thing is, the last time there was talk about weepers, it was Kentucky. And the thing is, Kentucky actually canceled test sessions and practice time. And so the thing is, pretty interesting, at least for me, to see this again. Is Texas Motor Speedway going to get repaid in the future? I doubt it. And I think at this point, because the surface is definitely abrasive, it's bumpy, etc., it gives the track a lot of character. I don't think it should be repaid. Just simply fix the weepers for April next year. That's really all I gotta say. But the thing is, losing two practice sessions, I think definitely hurts some teams, and maybe was the reason why Keselowski led 312 laps, and it might also be the reason why we saw so many tire failures. Because the thing is, really in the Friday practice, not a whole lot of teams lasted this. Not a lot of race teams were out on the racetrack for maybe more than 20 laps. So the thing is, I think the lack of practice definitely did have an effect on the race, in a good and bad way, depending on the drivers. Also, and this was on Sunday morning, Kyle Busch, Carl Edwards, and Denny Hamlin, all of their cars actually they had to get the splitters fixed, and this is very similar to both Penske cars back in Michigan in August. And so the thing is, neither Penske cars got penalized. So the thing is, I don't think any of the Gibbs cars are going to get penalized, especially since they fixed it. But the thing is, it was interesting to see the splitters get confiscated once again. But anyway. So now after that, we are finally green. Green flag is in the air, and Keselowski pulls away. He pretty much pulled away on almost every single restart, with the exception of the last one. But anyway. So the thing is, Keselowski led, and the thing is, there wasn't a whole lot of movement really up front, and then all of a sudden, caution number 1 on lap number 11, and thing is chase implications. Joe Logano spins. Joe Logano has a tire go down while running, I think, fourth. The tire goes down. A tire goes down, and then spins and turns 3 and 4. But the thing is, does not hit anything. But the thing is, it causes a lot of damage outside and inside of the race car. This Logano goes behind the wall, and the crowd cheers once again. Sort of like what happened to him last week in Martinsville when Kenseth took him out. Then we have pit stops. And thing is, here we go. Restart on lap 18, and McMurray actually got pretty close to the wall. And thing is, one lap later, Harvick was actually able to clear Keselowski off turn number 2. So actually, this restart would be the first and only restart up until the last restart where someone actually was able to really give Keselowski a run for his money. Kevin Harvick, and I guess he would lead up until caution number 2. Ryan Blaney's right front tire goes down and he hits the wall in turns 1 and 2. And actually, a couple laps before this, he actually hit the wall coming out with turn number 4. And actually, one interesting thing about that is that to me, I don't know if the safer barriers off turn number 4 are new, but the thing is, it was announced maybe like a month ago. Texas North Speedway did actually get a lot more safer barriers, and I think safer barriers now ring the entire outside wall on the racetrack, I believe. But that area possibly did not have safer barriers before. Maybe I'm just forgetting. And I think as Ryan Blaney would go behind the wall, DNF, and finish dead last. Pit stops, lap number 26. And I think as Ryan Blaney's caution came pretty much at the point they were going to they threw because the thing is, had Ryan Blaney not had a tire failure, they were probably going to throw the competition caution not too long after that, because the thing is, obviously there was no practice yesterday for the Cup Series. Pit stops, lap number 26. Hamlin. He hasn't really been able to really catch a break as of recently. And the thing is, it continued today with fuel pressure issues. He goes behind the wall for the next several laps. But here we go. Restart lap number 30. And then lap number 36, Kevin Harvick running second has his tire go down. The thing is, does not spin. He does an amazing job to control the race car, and thus he continues and does not lose a lap. That brings out our third caution. And in the back half of the field comes down Pit Road, and here we go. Restart lap number 42. Side by side for first place between, I think it was Keselowski and Kyle Busch. Cannot remember. It actually was, because I actually wrote it in my notes. 1 lap later, Keselowski cleared Kyle Busch off turn number 2. And I think is right about here in the race, I started to notice that Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Jimmie Johnson were crawling up to they were crawling into the top 5, and then all of a sudden, a couple laps later, Dale Earnhardt Jr. has a right front, or actually, I think it was actually a left front. Yeah, it was a left front tire. His left front tire went flat entering turn number 1. The thing is, he kept it out of the wall, and would have to pit, and he would have to pit under green. No caution. But he would fall 1 lap down. The thing is, he would eventually catch a lucky break. Caution number 4 on lap 52. Tony Stewart spins by himself on turn number 4, but the thing is, no damage other than the splitter. And the thing is, I guess something else broke, because the thing is, he would never come back onto the racetrack. So the thing is, pretty interesting if you ask me. Pit stops, lap number 53. And the thing is really, no one really decided to play to really roll the dice on any strategies. There weren't really a lot of. There wasn't hardly any moment in the race during pit stops, green flag or yellow flag, or someone decided to take 2 tires or fuel only. It may be a lot of that just simply has to do with the tire wear, and with the amount of tire failures in this race. Restart lap number 58. And thing is, I think it's also around this point I noticed that Kyle Larson was starting to get into the mix. He got himself into the top 5, and actually, it wouldn't be too long after that where Kevin Harvick finally got himself back up into the top 10, and then Larson at around lap number 80 actually moved in the second and was actually gaining on Keselowski every now and then. I think it just depended on whether Keselowski was in traffic or not. And then all of a sudden, but by the time we got to lap number 100, green flag pit stops were approaching, but then all of a sudden the pit caution comes out. Larson running into the top 5. I don't know if he was still second up. The thing is, once again, a left rear tire goes down, does not spin. The thing is, enough debris was sent out onto the racetrack. The caution did come out, and the thing is, it was this weekend was just simply Larson. This weekend, it was just simply a lot about luck, because the thing is, in the Xfinity race yesterday, for those who didn't watch it, Larson was leading and looked like that. It looked like that he was on his way to his first win of the year in any of the 3 series, and all of a sudden his left rear tire goes down, he spins, and simply ruins the rest of his race. And this was like inside of like 30 laps to go, and all of a sudden now it was deja vu. Anyways, so the thing is, we have pit stops. Keselowski once again comes off with the lead. Restart up 107. Johnson tried to take away second, but fell back to fourth. And the thing is, I also right around this point, I decided to give 2 shout outs: Eric Jones and Brian Scott, who both at the time were actually into the top 10. And actually, Brian Scott, in some of his part-time performances this season has actually had some pretty good but also quiet performances, top 15, top 10 cars in some of his races this season. Most recently Kansas, and the thing is, he actually had a top 10 car back in Auto Club. So Brian Scott, if he wants to race in the Circuit Series in the future, so the thing is, who knows, if Brian Scott gets a full-time ride, he could actually have a pretty solid career, maybe. But anyway, our 6th caution came out for debris on the backstretch, and the thing is, this probably came because the thing is, 4 laps before, up 145, Ryan Newman, he was probably out to the top 10. I wasn't paying almost any attention to where he was on the racetrack. He has a left rear tire go down, but saves it coming off turn. It saves it coming off the turn number 2, comes down the pit road, and chances are someone spot debris, and this the caution comes out. Pit stops. Keselowski once again first on pit road. And the thing is, one problem impacting a chaser, Kurt Busch. He pits again with loose lug nuts in case Kane was penalized for speeding. Restart lap 500, lap 154. And thing is coming to start the second lap. Dale Earnhardt Jr. running into the top 5. He made a nice recovery. Got into the wall. He didn't hit it that hard, but the thing is, it did create a dent in the right rear quarter panel. And the thing is, not too long after that, he was just dropping like a rock. They did not pit. It did not pit. The thing is, it would not. Things were not getting better until he later spun all on his own, bringing out the 7th caution in the race. Pit stops. Keselowski once again comes off with the lead, and now we have a restart on lap 173. So just past halfway. um, and thing is, thing is, for about the next 10, 15 laps, we actually had a pretty good battle between Jimmie Johnson and Carl Edwards. And also at the same point, I also noted that Larson made a nice recovery running inside the top 10 again, and also McMurray also got himself into the top 10 after hanging around outside the top 10 before this for the most part. And then on lap 197, eighth caution came out for Terrebane. His right rear tire just simply exploded, and this would, I think this would end his day. Okay, he won behind the wall, but the thing is he finished the race like I think like almost like 40 laps down. And then we had pit stops, restart up 203. And one lap after this, there was actually smoke coming out of Kyle Larson's car. But the thing is, we would never see that again. So the thing is, it was strange in my opinion. And thing is, really, at this point, it was just simply like a battle for second, because the thing is, at this point, no one had anything for Keselowski. And the thing is, I thought to myself, unless something bad happens to Keselowski, he is definitely going to win this race, because the thing is, no one could catch him. And thing is, unfortunately, more bad luck for Kyle Larson on lap 232. He was running about 6, and all of a sudden he has another left rear tire go down. So I think it's something must have been wrong with the car. And thing is, green flag pit stops up 251, and just before this, I just want to point out a couple things. All 400 cars were into the top 10, and Dale Earnhardt Jr. actually, just before this was actually in the fastest car on the racetrack, which was interesting. So the thing is, we had green flag pit stops. Jimmie Johnson stayed out to lead 2 laps, and then all of a sudden Keselowski got the lead back on 254. And thing is, Kevin Harvick actually pitted, I think, a lap or 2 before Keselowski. He cut the margin from like 4 to 5 seconds to now all of a sudden under a second. But then not too long after Keselowski got back up to speed, he started pulling away again. And thing is, it wasn't too long after that to where now we only had less than 20 cars on the lead lap. And the thing is, it kept getting smaller lap after lap after lap, sort of. And thing is, at this point, I was also pointing out some of the drivers that are having some quiet days. I mentioned earlier Eric Jones, Brian Scott, Austin Dillon. He was also having a pretty quiet day. And thing is, Jeff Gordon, who won last week at Martinsville, he was having a solid day, and definitely they're definitely going to need any good momentum they can get heading to Homestead in 2 weeks from now. And then all of a sudden, more tire troubles. 280. Kevin Harvick running second, pretty much almost exact same problem, and I believe the exact same area, the quad oval, tire down. And thing is actually both times. The reason why Harvick had tire issues is because the thing is he ran over something. And thing is, his crew chief Ronnie Childress, and I saw this on lap coverage. He was simply frustrated, and NASCAR cannot clean it up the racetrack. So the thing is, I wonder if NASCAR is going to have. I wonder if NASCAR is going to have anything to say about that. Maybe that was the reason why drivers like Harvick, Larson had multiple tire problems. The thing is, he would come down the pit road, no caution. He would fall off. He would fall one lap down. But the thing is, a good thing about at the moment Harvick pit. It was just inside the film window. So the thing is, they would make it. We now knew that Harvick would make it the rest of the way. And then just before up 300, another cycle of green flag pit stops. And then Kevin Harvick led but not for too long. 301, Keselowski with the first tires just flew by Harvick, and then I guess Harvick, he just started dropping like a rock. And the thing is, Keselowski at this point had about a 4-second lead over second place at the time. I think it was Truex. And the thing is, it looked like he was going to win. Then all of a sudden, the caution number 9, debris from Eric Jones on lap 311. And the thing is, chances are it could have been another tire fall, because the thing is, there was a piece off of that car that was missing on the right front. So the thing is, you cannot say at this was a phantom debris caution or anything like that. So the thing is, pit stops. So the thing is, I'm going to list the top 10. Keselowski, Truex, Keselowski, Truex, Johnson, McMurray, who took 2 tires, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Carl Edwards, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jeff Gordon, and Kurt Busch. That is the top 10 exiting the pits. And now all of a sudden we have a restart, lap 317. I want to look at the time. And I think is really. I'm actually sorry for the pause. I actually want to actually see something here. Okay, fine. That's not a good video. I want to see if I can actually like find a video. Darn it. There's not really like a full video, because the thing is, I sort of want to explain to the best of my ability, watching a video of what happened on that final restart. So the thing is, the final restart, it came out on lap 317. Just 17 more laps to go. Keselowski on the inside, Truex on the high side, and all of a sudden, here we go. Green flag is in the air. Keselowski and Truex are side by side. Johnson actually, it looked like that. I think what happened is that Johnson was actually trying to, he was trying to peek underneath Kyle Busch, not Kyle Busch, Keselowski, but the thing is, could not get it done. And the thing is, that actually halted the rest of the field up a little bit. But the thing is, that allowed for Keselowski and Truex Jr. just to stay side by side. And the thing is, Truex Jr. would lead coming back to the start finish line, but then all of a sudden, I unfortunately I don't remember exactly what happened. And I'm actually going to I want to see. I think what they said is that Keselowski and Truex did make some contact, and then all of a sudden it caused Truex to wash up the racetrack. But Keselowski as well, and guess what? This allowed Jimmie Johnson to all of a sudden join the mix. And thing is later on, fine. I'm reading this from Bob Hawkers on Twitter. Truex team said he did have a loose right front there on the final rounds. So the thing is, maybe that explains it. The thing is, also the tweet above that says Martin Truex Jr. said they may be slightly touched. He isn't sure who initiated contact, and it wasn't Matt at all, Brad. So the thing is interesting. I think if I can remember, I think I definitely would like to see a replay, because the thing is, it was interesting. But anyway, so the thing is, Truex eventually fell the picture, and the thing is, now it was Brad Keselowski and Jimmie Johnson 1-2 on the racetrack. And the thing is, I actually wrote this in my notes not too long after they were 1-2 close together. Deja vu of 2012. If you can remember this race 3 years ago, 2012 race, Jimmie Johnson, Keselowski 1-2 in the race, also 1-2 in the championship. And thing is, Johnson and Keselowski, they were side by side and actually made contact coming to the start finish line a lap after the restart, and it was simply it was definitely some good racing to watch. And the thing is, the thing is, with the help of a Valerius caution, with probably only a few laps to go, Johnson would eventually get by Keselowski, and as Johnson would go on to win the race. The thing is, Keselowski would eventually become the championship after the next 2 races. And so the thing is, at this moment, I thought this is pretty much deja vu. Keselowski and Johnson 1-2 on the racetrack. And the thing is, simply, for those who can remember, this was just simply good racing. And the thing is, in my opinion, this is Texas Motor Speedway at its best. And the thing is, I think that if we were able to see more racing like this at Texas, I think it would be pretty good. Because honestly, in recent years, the thing is, I brought up Keselowski and Johnson 2 years ago at this race. But the thing is, really before that, Logano did pass Gordon on the final lap in April of 2014. The thing is, really before that, I'm trying to really think. Both races in 2007 did actually have some pretty good finishes. Jipper and Matt Kenseth, and then Johnson and Matt Kenseth. But the thing is, other than that, Texas Motor Speedway isn't really known for its good finishes, personally. But the thing is, anyway, back to the racing. So the thing is, both drivers were trying different things. And the thing is, I think what they said is that Johnson is better. Johnson was better in turns 1-2. Keselowski was better in turns 3 and 4. The thing is, some laps we saw Johnson on the high side, other laps we saw Johnson on the low side, and this Keselowski and thus whatever line Johnson wasn't using, Keselowski was on the line. A couple laps, Keselowski I think was trying to take Johnson's line away. And the thing is, overall, as this is happening, it was really, like, I thought that because Keselowski had the clear advantage, I thought that he was still going to be able to hold on Johnson, and eventually Keselowski was going to be able to start. He was going to be able to start pulling away. I think he did pull away briefly, but then all of a sudden, as they were approaching off traffic, Keselowski and Johnson, who were both racing hard, slipping and sliding, more so Johnson than Keselowski, but then all of a sudden, with just, I believe, 3 or 4 laps to go, Johnson went high, Keselowski went low, and then all of a sudden, Johnson all of a sudden decided to do the slide job, coming off of turn number 2, down the backstretch, side by side for the lead. And then turn 3 and 4, Johnson clears Keselowski, and for once the crowd cheers for Jimmie Johnson. And the thing is, Johnson was able to pull away, and this coming off turn number 4 on the final lap, Jimmie Johnson wins at Texas Motor Speedway for the 6th time in his career. Sweeps both races this year. Remember, he won this race back in April. And the thing is, for the fourth fall race in a row, Jimmie Johnson wins. Yeah. If you think this isn't one of Johnson's best racetracks, you are wrong. And the thing is, the amazing thing about it, Jimmie Johnson only led 6 laps. 6 laps. And the thing is, this is one of the reasons why Johnson has won a total of 75 races. It has won 6 championships. They may not always be good at the beginning. The thing is, never count out Jimmie Johnson, especially when he's in a winning position late in the race. And so the thing is, that was Texas. So the thing is, a good ending. A good ending that I think many people are going to be talking about leading into next week at Phoenix. And the thing is, looking at the finishing order on Racing Reference, it does kind of look, in my opinion, a little funny to see Johnson win the race leading only 6 laps, and then all of a sudden the guy behind him, Keselowski, led 312 laps. Or in other words, all but 20. Keselowski led every single lap but 22. So the thing is, Keselowski had one of, if not his most dominating performance ever, and yet still does not win. In fact, Keselowski with a total of 312 laps led. That is actually the most laps led by a single driver ever in a Texas race. The thing is, other than Johnson Keselowski, Harvick finished third. Nice comeback for him after 2 flat tires. Kyle Busch finished fourth. Carl Edwards finished fifth. Junior finished sixth. So a great rebound for him. Kurt Busch seventh. Simply, he just simply wasn't that much of a factor much of the race. But then all of a sudden, Mark Truex Jr. a little bit of a heartbreak. Could have finished the top 5 or could have finished definitely into the top 3, but unfortunately, I guess due to a loose wheel, dropped back, and then Jeff Warner finished ninth. McMurray gets the top 10 after coming close to after finishing second at Martinsville. Behind him, Austin Dillon, Eric Jones, nice finish for him. Finished 12th. Paul Menard 13th. Brian Scott 14th. Cooper 15th. Jack Patrick, who actually had her best qualifying run, she finished 16th. And then the last card, wait a second, Almirola finished 17th, and then the final car on the lead lap, Eric Almirola finished 18th. I think it's really, I think it's other than that, there was actually one thing that I did actually go unnoticed. So the thing is, apparently Kyle Larson actually finished this race 30 laps down behind the wall. But the thing is, there was never a report about that. So the thing is, that's kind of interesting. I wonder what went wrong. But anyway, so the thing is, that's highlighting the finishes. And I think is now we're heading to Phoenix. The thing is, how does the chase picture look? Well, the thing is, Gordon is the only driver that can rest easy for the next week because the thing is, Johnson and non-chaser won. The thing is, highest driver other than Gordon, Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch, 11 points above the cutoff line. But the thing is, as we saw earlier this year with Johnson at Dover and Denny Hamlin at Talladega, anything can happen. In Kyle Busch, he can easily be his championship hopes can be wiped out just like that. And the thing is, behind Kyle Busch, we have Kevin Harvick, who has won, I believe, 5 out. I think I saw this. I think I saw this stat somewhere. He has won 5 out of the last 6 races, including the last 4 in a row. And the Mark Truex Jr. It's the thing is if this race was the cutoff, that would be the final 4 behind Truex Jr., Carl Edwards, Keselowski. And the thing is because Keselowski did not win this race, he's only about 25. He's only like 19 points behind the cutoff. Edwards is about 7 points behind the cutoff. Kurt Busch and Logano. The thing is, in Logano, he has to win. Logano is just too far back in the points. He's just too far back in the points. And Kurt Busch pretty much also isn't a much wins situation. But the thing is, we're heading to Phoenix. And the thing is, even though Phoenix in the past 3 years has definitely had some dramatic moments. 2012, the Gordon Boyer rivalry. 2013, Carl Edwards runs out fuel with less than 2 laps to go, and then 2014, Newman decided to do a crazy dive bomb underneath Kyle Larson just to make it into the final 4. So the thing is, will we see anything at Phoenix? Well, the thing is, I don't really know, because the thing is, Phoenix. I mentioned Phoenix is basically Harvick's house. So the thing is, I think a lot of people are definitely going to place their bets on Kevin Harvick. But the thing is, because Kevin Harvick has won, I think 5 out of the last 6 races. And the other one was Carl Edwards, spring of 2013. It's kind of like okay, fine. I will actually be in the grandstands next Sunday. I think I'll be a little I'll be a little shocked if Harvick does not win, to be honest. Um, so so it'll just simply be interesting. Last season, I believe, had the most cautions ever for Phoenix race, or thing is I think at least one of the or race with one of the most cautions of 2014 at the very least. And that's kind of interesting, especially since Phoenix is usually a flat racetrack, you know. But anyway, you know, it'll just simply, you know, it will just simply be interesting, as I usually say. But I think that's pretty much it. If for me, so the thing is next week, because I will be in attendance, I'm not going to be taking any notes. You know, I'm just simply for once going to enjoy a sprint cup race. And so that means that next week I'm probably going to be spending more time talking more about the championship pictures of Homestead, etc. So I want to thank you all for watching this. Be sure to rate, comment, subscribe, and bye.